In 1932, the average American family earned less than $1,000 a year. Flour cost 16 cents for a 2-pound bag. A dozen eggs cost 12 cents. And yet, mothers across this country fed 5, 6, 7 children 3 times a day and never once missed a meal. They did it with sandwiches. 35 of them are about to change how you think about food forever. Number 8 on this list was so effective that the U.S. government tried to get people to stop eating it. Number 14 came from Italian immigrants who could not afford the ingredients for the real thing and accidentally invented something better. Number 23 will genuinely shock you, and number 31, which sounds completely made up, was actually served at the White House. Stay right here because by the time we get to number 1, you're going to look at your kitchen completely differently. Let's count them down. Number 35, the sugar sandwich. Before jelly came in jars, before peanut butter cost a nickel, mothers across the Dust Bowl spread soft butter on white bread and sprinkled it with granulated sugar. That was lunch. A pound of sugar cost 5 cents in 1932. In Oklahoma and Kansas, where wheat fields turned to dust and cattle died standing, the sugar sandwich was survival. Children carried them to school wrapped in wax paper, embarrassed but fed. Food scientists now know that the combination of fat and simple sugar creates exactly the rapid energy absorption a malnourished child needed to make it through an afternoon of chores. Your great-grandmother was not just desperate, she was accidentally brilliant. Number 34, the ketchup sandwich. When the icebox held nothing but condiments and the grocery money had run out 3 days early, mothers reached for the Heinz bottle. 2 slices of bread, a thick smear of ketchup, dinner, the vinegar aided digestion. The tomato provided vitamin C. A bottle cost 12 cents and lasted 2 weeks if you were, careful. In Pittsburgh and Detroit, where factory closures left entire neighborhoods unemployed, this was so common that children stopped noticing its strangeness. It kept them alive. That was enough. Number 33, the lard sandwich. In the coal fields of Pennsylvania and West Virginia, lard was cheaper than butter and twice as filling. Mothers spread it thick on day-old bread, salted it generously, and handed it to husbands heading underground for 12-hour shifts. Nearly 900 calories in a single sandwich. When vegetable shortening arrived in the 1940s, promising modern cleanliness, lard vanished from American kitchens. We traded a natural fat humans had eaten for 10,000 years for a processed alternative we now know causes heart disease. Progress. Number 32. The Lard and Molasses Sandwich. The same lard spread, but with blackstrap molasses drizzled over the top. This came from Appalachian families and Creole households in Louisiana simultaneously. 2. Communities separated by 1,000 miles who arrived at the same combination for the same reason. Lard provided the calories. Molasses provided iron, calcium, and the only sweetness some children tasted all week. Blackstrap molasses was the byproduct of sugar refining, the part the sugar companies could not sell to wealthy buyers. Poor families bought it for pennies and called themselves lucky. They were. Number 31. The mock chicken sandwich. This one was served at the White House. Franklin Roosevelt's First Lady, Eleanor, insisted the White House menu reflect what ordinary Americans were eating. So the kitchen served mock chicken, egg scrambled with onion, tomato, and butter, cooked until dry and served cold on bread. It contained no chicken whatsoever. The staff reportedly hated preparing it. Guests reportedly hated eating it. Eleanor served it anyway. She said Americans should not be embarrassed by what kept them alive. She was right about most things. Number 30. The potato sandwich. Leftover mashed potatoes from the night before, cold from the icebox, spread between 2 slices of bread. Carbohydrates on carbohydrates, creating a dense filling meal from almost nothing. Potatoes sold for 2 cents a pound in the worst years. A family bought 10 pounds and ate for a week. The potato sandwich was pure survival mathematics. Maximum calories, minimum cost. Today we pay $12 for loaded potato skins at chain restaurants and consider ourselves sophisticated. We are eating a depression sandwich with better lighting. Number 29. The onion sandwich. Raw onions sliced thin on buttered bread, salted generously. This was the bachelor's dinner, the night shift worker's lunch. Onions cost a penny each in 1933 and kept for weeks in a cellar. The smell followed workers onto factory floors and assembly lines, but the taste, sharp and sweet and strangely satisfying, made it worth the social cost. The French have never stopped eating onion, soup, and called it high cuisine. The American working man ate it cold between slices of bread and was told to be ashamed. The French had better marketing. Number 28, the peanut butter and mayonnaise sandwich. This sounds wrong. It was wildly popular. The sour creaminess of mayonnaise cut the thick richness of peanut butter in a way that balanced both ingredients. According to culinary historians Jane Ziegelman and Andy Coe, this combination spread through American lunch counters and home kitchens in the mid-1930s because every household had both. Every household. peanut butter for protein, mayo for fat. Neither required refrigeration, neither spoiled quickly. Some families added a thin slice of white onion. Foodie blogs have been rediscovering this sandwich for years. They think they discovered something. They did not. Number 27, the peanut butter and pickle sandwich. The saltiness of the dill pickle cut the richness of the peanut butter. The crunch provided texture that soft Depression-era bread could not. Pregnant women specifically craved it. The combination of salt, fat, and acid satisfied cravings in a way a few cheap foods could. By 1936, this had spread from Kansas to Kentucky, passed between church potlucks and neighborhood gossip. It never disappeared. You can find it on restaurant menus, framed as a gourmet rediscovery. Your great-grandmother is owed royalties. Number 26, the bread and butter pickle sandwich. Bread and butter pickles, sweet, tangy, thin-sliced, layered between buttered bread and eaten as a complete meal. In 2019, modern food scientists discovered that the fermentation process in pickles creates beneficial bacteria that support gut health, and that the vinegar actively helps regulate blood sugar. What looked like desperation turned out to be sound nutrition. Your great-grandmother's bread and butter pickle sandwich was healthier than most of what we eat today. She did not need a food scientist to tell her. She just needed lunch. Number 25, the banana sandwich. Sliced bananas on buttered white bread, sometimes with sugar, sometimes with mayonnaise, which sounds strange until you remember that bananas are sweet and fatty enough that the mayo acted more as a dressing than a condiment. This was Elvis Presley's childhood, long before he added peanut butter and bacon and fried the whole thing in butter. In the 1930s, bananas cost 10 cents a dozen, imported from Central America. For children who rarely saw fresh fruit of any kind, the banana sandwich was something close to wonderful. Elvis never stopped chasing that feeling. Number 24, the tomato sandwich. In summer, when gardens exploded with more tomatoes than any family could eat, the tomato sandwich became a daily staple. Thick slices of ripe garden tomato, mayonnaise, salt, and pepper on white bread. This is the sandwich that school teachers in the South tried to ban from lunchboxes because it dripped and stained and made a mess. Children loved it with a passion that surprised their parents. The tomatoes were free. For a few weeks, every August, poor families ate like kings. The tomato sandwich is still made in Southern kitchens today, never with tomatoes as good as those gardens produced. We traded flavor for convenience and called it progress. Number 23, the carrot and peanut sandwich. In 1936, a cookbook called 1001 Sandwiches, a real book, a genuinely real book, published by Florence Cowles, offered a recipe she called Mysteries. Raw carrots chopped coarsely, salted peanuts, mayonnaise, spread on bread, and decorated with sliced stuffed olives or small pickles. This sounds like a dare. It was served at polite gatherings. Ladies' lunch groups made it. Church potlucks featured it. The combination of crunchy raw carrot, salty peanut, creamy mayo, and briny olive sounds like it has no business being edible. According to every account, it somehow worked. Nobody makes it. Today. Somebody should. Number 22, the mayonnaise sandwich. In the South, where Duke's mayonnaise had not yet crossed every county line and Hellman's had not yet crossed the Mason-Dixon, mothers spread mayo on soft white bread and called it lunch. The eggs in the mayonnaise provided protein. The oil provided fat. A jar cost 15 cents and lasted through countless sandwiches. Children who had never tasted egg salad did not know what they were missing. Today we put aioli on everything and pretend we invented something. We did not. Number 21, the Vinegar Pie Sandwich. When sugar ran out and fruit was unavailable, cooks in the rural South and Midwest made filling from cider vinegar, flour, butter, and whatever sweetener remained. Molasses, sorghum syrup, or the last of the white sugar scraped from the bottom of the bag. This filling went into pies during evening meals, and the leftover filling, thickened and cooled, was sometimes spread on bread for school. Lunches the next day. The taste was sharp and caramel adjacent. This is the only sandwich on this list that actively made people feel warm despite being eaten cold. Some things do not make sense and yet are true. Number 20, the bean sandwich. Cold pinto beans mashed slightly with a fork, spread on bread like rough paste. Monday's lunch in Texas and New Mexico after Sunday's pot had been served for dinner. Workers carried bean sandwiches to railroad yards and oil fields. Some added raw onion, others used hot sauce. A pound of dried beans cost 5 cents and fed a family for a week. Modern nutritionists now call the combination of complex carbohydrates, fiber, and plant protein in a bean sandwich nearly ideal. Our great-grandmothers did not need nutritionists. They needed lunch. Number 19, the Sardine Sandwich. Canned sardines mashed with mustard and a little vinegar, spread on whatever bread was available. This one came partly from Portuguese and Italian fishing communities along the East Coast and Gulf of Mexico, who had eaten sardines as a staple food for generations and brought the habit to American shores. A can cost a nickel and provided more omega-3 fatty acids per serving than almost anything else available at that price. The smell kept people at a distance on public transit. The nutrition kept families healthy through winters when fresh food was impossible. The sardine sandwich disappeared almost entirely from American lunch culture after the war, as prosperity made smelly foods feel embarrassing. The Portuguese never stopped. They were right. Here is something the history books almost never mention. During the Great Depression, the United States government's Bureau of Home Economics published pamphlets actively discouraging many of these sandwiches, calling them nutritionally inadequate, warning against too much fat, too much starch, too many empty calories. They pushed fresh vegetables and fruits that poor families could not afford. In 1934, a home economics teacher in Oklahoma was fired for teaching students to make sugar sandwiches. The school board called it promoting poor nutrition. The parents called it teaching survival. The tension between official advice and lived reality ran through the entire Depression. We see it today. Nutrition guidelines that assume everyone has access to a farmer's market. The poor have always known what the experts forget. Number 18, the bacon grease sandwich. When the last of the bacon had been eaten and only the drippings remained in the cast iron skillet, mothers let the grease solidify, scooped it out, and used it exactly as they would have used butter, on bread, with salt, sometimes with a little black pepper. This was not desperate. This was ordinary. Every southern kitchen kept a jar of bacon drippings on the counter, not in the refrigerator, because the rendered fat kept safely at room temperature for weeks. Some women added it to their sandwiches, specifically because the smoke flavor from the bacon made plain bread taste like something better than it was. The memory of meat stretched one more day. The jar on the counter is still there in some kitchens. Those are the kitchens worth eating in. Number 17, the fried Bologna sandwich. Bologna was the cheapest processed meat available in the 1930s. Made from offcuts of pork and beef that processors could not sell as anything else, stuffed into casings and sold for a fraction of what any recognizable cut of meat cost. Mothers sliced it thick, scored it around the edge so it would not curl, and fried it in a dry skillet until the edges browned and the center puffed slightly. Between two slices of bread with yellow mustard, a few families used a smear of mayonnaise. The Bologna sandwich did not disappear with the Depression. It never left. It is still in American lunchboxes across the rural South and Midwest, still made the same way, still eaten by people who make no apology for it. Some foods are honest about what they are. Bologna is one of them. Number 16, the bread and gravy sandwich. When the roast was gone and only the drippings remained in the pan, mothers made gravy. Beef drippings, flour, water, salt. They poured it between two slices of bread and called it supper. The gravy carried the memory of meat long after the meat was gone. Children soaked their bread until it fell apart and ate it with spoons over bowls. A single roast could feed a family for 3 days and then provide gravy sandwiches for 2 more. Nothing was wasted. Modern restaurants serve bread with expensive dipping sauces and charge $8. Our great-grandmothers would have laughed and understood simultaneously. Number 15, the fried egg sandwich. A single egg fried in bacon grease until the edges crisped and the yolk stayed barely soft, placed between 2 slices of bread. Eggs cost 12 cents a dozen in 1932, making them the cheapest complete protein available. Families who kept backyard chickens had even cheaper access. The fried egg sandwich has never left American breakfast culture. The difference is that in 1932 it was dinner. Today we call it artisan, charge $12 for it in a cafe in Brooklyn, and consider ourselves clever. Your great-grandmother charged nothing and considered herself lucky. Here is something food companies do not want you to notice. During the Depression, manufacturers like General Mills and Procter & Gamble spent aggressively on advertising specifically designed to make American women feel that cooking from scratch was old-fashioned and inefficient. Betty Crocker, a fictional character invented to seem like a trusted friend, was deployed to push women away from their mother's recipes and toward packaged products. The message was clear. You are too busy and too modern to cook the old way. What the advertisements did not say was that homemade versions of almost everything cost a fraction of the packaged alternative and tasted better. Our great-grandmothers knew how to make something from nothing. Their grandchildren learned to open packages. The food industry made billions on the distance between those two things. Number 14, the pasta sandwich. Italian immigrant families in New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia boiled spaghetti with olive oil, garlic, and salt. Because olive oil was cheaper than butter in Italian neighborhoods, and garlic was grown in backyard plots for free. Then piled the cooled pasta between slices of Italian bread for school lunches. This sounds wrong. This sounds completely wrong. It was so common in Italian-American communities that it had a name, pasta, in pain, and children traded them at lunchtime with children who had ketchup sandwiches and considered themselves ahead. Carbs on carbs between bread, maximum energy for zero cost. The pasta sandwich has resurfaced in every generation of food blogs as something shocking and new. Italian grandmothers nod. They knew. Number 13, the mock apple sandwich. In 1934, the Ritz Cracker Company put a recipe on the back of their cracker box for mock apple pie. Ritz crackers, baked with lemon juice, sugar, and cinnamon that tasted, inexplicably, almost like real apple pie. This was because the chemical compounds released by the lemon juice and cinnamon during baking mimicked the aromatic compounds in cooked apples at a molecular level. It should not work. Food scientists at multiple universities have confirmed it works. The Ritz cracker filling cooled into something spreadable. Spread on bread, it became a mock apple sandwich. Children who had never tasted a real apple pie did not know the difference. Children who had tasted real apple pie sometimes could not tell the difference either. That second group is the more interesting story. Number 12, the pimento cheese sandwich. Shredded cheddar, chopped pimentos, and mayonnaise, mixed and spread thick on soft white bread. This was the church potluck champion, the funeral food, the thing that appeared wherever people gathered and needed to be fed without money for something impressive. During the Depression, pimento cheese stretched expensive cheddar into something that could feed a crowd. Mothers guarded their recipes like family secrets, varying the ratio of pimento, adding a little hot sauce here or a pinch of cayenne there. The pimento cheese sandwich was democratic, served at debutante balls and fish fries alike, at white tables and black tables in church halls from Virginia to Georgia. It is still there. It never left. It will outlast everything on this list. Number 11, the olive loaf sandwich. Sliced olive loaf, that strange pink processed meat studded with pimento-stuffed green olives, layered on white bread with mayonnaise. Olive loaf cost more than plain Bologna, but less than real ham. The olive loaf sandwich said something specific about the family that made it. We are not wealthy. We are not desperate. We are in the middle, and we intend to stay there. That aspiration mattered. Depression food was not only about nutrition, it was about dignity. The olive loaf sandwich was dignity in a lunchbox. Number 10, the Chicago-style hot dog sandwich. In Chicago, Italian and Eastern European immigrant vendors in the 1930s were selling what they called depression sandwiches. A hot dog in a poppy seed bun loaded with yellow mustard, relish, white onions, tomatoes, a pickle spear, sport peppers, and celery salt. The hot dog itself was cheap. Everything piled on top made it feel like a complete meal rather than a snack. Professor Bill Savage of Northwestern University has documented that the Chicago-style hot dog was, as he says, really a product of the Great Depression. A local chain called Fluky's on the west side claimed to have invented it specifically for working families who needed lunch for a nickel. The Chicago-style hot dog became one of the most recognized American regional foods. It started as a poor man's meal and became a city's identity. Number 9, the chipped beef sandwich. Dried beef shaved paper thin and folded into milk gravy. White sauce, stretched with flour until it covered as much bread as possible. Ladled hot over toast and eaten open-faced. The U.S. military served it to soldiers and gave it an unprintable name involving feces on toast. Families at home called it supper and were grateful. Chipped beef and white sauce appeared in homes from the 1930s through the 1950s and then vanished almost entirely when prosperity made Americans feel embarrassed by cheap food. A generation lost it. Their grandchildren are looking for it. Number 8, the government butter sandwich. During the worst years of the Depression, the USDA distributed surplus commodities to struggling families through relief programs, and the commodity most despised by the Bureau of Home Economics because it went against their push for modern processed foods was pure government butter, actual butter, given away. The Bureau published pamphlets discouraging families from eating too much of it. Families spread it thick on plain bread, ate it 3 times a day, and had the best-fed children on their block. The government tried to redirect them to vegetable shortening. They ignored the government and ate the butter. This is the only time in American history that ignoring official nutritional advice resulted in better outcomes. It may not be the only time it should have. Number 7, the head cheese sandwich. Sliced head cheese, that jellied meat made from cleaned bits of a pig's skull, snout, and jaw, cooked slowly until the collagen dissolved and the whole thing set into a savory loaf, layered on rye bread with yellow mustard and dill pickles. German, Polish, Czech, and Hungarian immigrant families across the Midwest made this with pride. The taste is mild and deeply savory. The texture is firm and slightly gelatinous in a way that takes getting used to. American-born children of immigrant parents ate it without question, and then, when they grew up and wanted to seem properly American, pretended they did not know what it was. We lost something real in that particular aspiration. Number 6. The tongue sandwich. Beef tongue boiled for 3 to 4 hours until the tough muscle became impossibly tender, the outer skin peeled away to reveal smooth pink meat that sliced like fine roast beef. Layered on rye with mustard and horseradish. Tongue sold for 20 cents a pound in the 1930s when regular beef cost twice that, because American buyers did not know what to do with it, and immigrant buyers did. Jewish deli culture from New York to Chicago made tongue a staple. Working-class families who learned from their immigrant neighbors discovered they could buy the most tender, silkiest meat on the animal for half the price of anything at the butcher's counter. The taste was mild and beefy. The texture was extraordinary. Children who grew up eating tongue sandwiches remembered them as luxury. They were eating the food of poverty and feeling like kings. Here is something almost nobody talks about. A significant number of Depression-era sandwiches were invented or adapted by immigrant communities, Italian, German, Polish, Jewish, Portuguese, Mexican, who had been eating resourceful poverty food for generations, in countries that never had American prosperity to begin with. When the Depression arrived, these communities barely noticed the change in their kitchens. They already knew how to make something from almost nothing. The immigrant food traditions that Americans spent decades assimilating away from were the exact traditions that would have seen them through the Depression more comfortably. Every generation that tried to eat like wealthy Americans and forgot how to eat like their grandparents paid a price in 1932 that their grandparents would not have paid. That pattern has not changed. Number 5, the cucumber sandwich. Thin sliced cucumbers, mayonnaise, a little salt and pepper on white bread with the crusts cut off. This one came from England. It was originally a refinement. The cucumber sandwich was a staple of British afternoon tea culture, elegant and light, served at garden parties for people with money and time. When British and Canadian immigrants brought it to American communities in the Depression years, it arrived stripped of its elegance and kept only its practicality. Cucumbers grew easily in backyard gardens. A single plant produced more than a family could eat. Mayo was cheap. Bread was cheap. The cucumber sandwich crossed from pretension to survival and was better for it. Some foods improve when they are forced to be honest about what they are. Number 4, the sweet pickle sandwich. Sweet pickle slices, bread and butter pickles or sweet gherkins. Layered between 2 slices of buttered white bread, and eaten as a complete lunch. This sounds like something a child invented. Children did invent it, or at least adopted it enthusiastically, and it appears in Depression-era school lunch memories from Georgia to Minnesota with remarkable consistency. The sweet, briny combination of sugar and vinegar satisfied something in the stomach that plain bread could not. Families who had a canning jar of homemade sweet pickles in the cellar ate these sandwiches through long winters when almost nothing else was available. The sweet pickle sandwich has a dedicated following in American food memory that is disproportionately invisible in official food history. Number 3, the Spam sandwich. Spam was introduced by Hormel in 1937, right at the tail end of the Depression, and became one of the defining foods of the era by the time the war began. Canned, shelf-stable, protein-dense, requiring no refrigeration and no cooking. Spam was exactly what families who had survived the Depression needed from a product. Sliced thin on white bread with a smear of mustard or mayo, it required nothing. It kept indefinitely. It tasted like something between ham and a hot dog, which was close enough to meat to matter. Spam became such a symbol of depression and wartime poverty that entire generations of Americans distanced themselves from it after the war. Hawaiians never did. Hawaii still consumes more Spam per capita than any U.S. state, because Hawaiian culture did not attach shame to the food that fed people. That is a lesson in itself. Number 2, the fried potato sandwich. Potatoes sliced thin, raw or cold from last night's supper, laid flat in a cast iron skillet with bacon grease or lard already hot, fried until the edges crisped and the centers went soft and golden, then lifted out and laid between 2 slices of bread with salt, sometimes a smear of mustard, sometimes nothing at all but the potato and the grease and the bread. This is one of the most consistently documented sandwiches in first-hand Depression-era accounts from across the country, from Kentucky coal families to Texas ranch workers to Minnesota farm households, all of them describing the same thing independently: fried potato sandwiches. This was not a recipe anyone wrote down because it was too obvious to need writing. You had potatoes, you had grease, you had bread, you fried the potatoes, you put them on the bread. The result was hot and filling and tasted, against all reasonable expectation, genuinely good. The crunch of the fried edge against soft bread. The salt, the fat, Simple things become extraordinary when you're hungry enough and someone makes them with care. People who grew up eating fried potato sandwiches in the 1930s described them decades later with something that was not quite nostalgia and not quite hunger, something in between. The memory of being fed. Number 1, the wish sandwich. 2 slices of bread with nothing between them. You wish you had some meat. You wish you had some cheese. You wish you had anything at all. This was the Depression at its worst. The families who ate wish sandwiches did not talk about them afterward. They tried to forget the taste of hunger barely masked by bread. The wish sandwich was not a recipe. It was a scar. An entire generation carried it in silence, and it made them save tin foil, reuse wax paper, clean every pot with bread, and never ever throw away food in front of their grandchildren who couldn't understand why it mattered so much. Now you know why. Tell me in the comments, which one of these is still on your table? Which one did your grandparents eat that you thought was strange? And which one are you going to try this week? Let me know and see you in the next one.